The video opens with the arrival of Dr. Mariko, a female psychiatrist, strolling towards the station exit. Mariko is returning home and has to catch a bus in front of the station. Unfortunately, she missed the bus just as it was about to leave, and several of the students on the bus mocked her. The bus exploded moments after it started operating. It seems that a youngster managed to escape with his whole body scorched in an attempt to rescue himself. When Mariko saw this, she approached the youngster and begged for assistance. Two more ladies were witnessing the disaster not far from the blast site. The two ladies were allegedly the masterminds of the latest bomb terror assault. The two ladies seemed pleased with the outcome of the horror that triggered the commotion. Detective Chaya and Detective Hirono are assigned to undertake crime scene investigations in the meanwhile. They realize that the bus explosion was triggered by an unknown fear. The police learn that several of the bus passengers had their tongues severed. When discussing the matter with other detectives, Detective Chaya said that the suicide bomber was inspired by a fortune teller called Kinju. He conducted a live broadcast some time ago forecasting a bomb explosion on a bus, and he found out who did it. Unfortunately, he became a victim of the explosion that he had foretold previously. Currently, police and investigators are having difficulty locating the true offender since, according to evidence at the site, the criminal employed a unique explosive device that was unlawfully marketed. Chaya and Hirono resumed their investigation of a warehouse. When they arrived, they heard a lady scream from inside the building. They dashed to the barn. When Hirono opened the door, a bomb burst, sending him flying. Chaya gently entered the warehouse that had recently exploded. He then discovered a guy with a head injury standing in the center of the pile. Ichiro Suzuki was the man's name. Because he was the sole one at the site, Ichiro was escorted to the police station. While in the cell, he overhears two criminals discussing how the guy would not be punished even if he kills someone. When Ichiro passed the two offenders the following day, he swiftly beat them. Two police officers attempted to stop Ichiro, but he disregarded them. Furthermore, it seems that Ichiro has tremendous strength, so the cops are overpowered. Ichiro's assaults came to a halt when he managed to pry the villain's eye out. Detective Chaya, who received the incident report, accused Ichiro of having mental issues. He was subsequently transported to a separate cell for psychological examination. Before Ichiro entered the unique cell, she could learn the jail plan in a very short period. In this cell, multiple physicians are trusted to treat Ichiro. Dr. Mariko is one of these physicians. They discovered Ichiro's corpse covered with stab wounds and flames. They subsequently decided that Ichiro's brain was experiencing a mechanical disruption. Dr. Mariko then performed an experiment on Ichiro, piercing him with a pin, but he did not respond. They noticed that Ichiro went to the bathroom precisely 1 hour after he ate, as he did every day throughout the surveillance, despite the fact that there are no clocks in the cells or the observation room. In another scene, the two females responsible for this serial murder are shown in a room. They were both in the same room as Ichiro when the bomb detonated at the warehouse, but they both escaped. Midorikawa and Yuria were the names of the two girls. Midorikawa seems to be aware of Ichiro's superpowers and intends to take him away. Yuria disguises herself as a nurse the following day, places a bug in Mariko's backpack, and copies her key. A young guy named Shimura shouted out as Mariko was going to accompany Ichiro to the cell. Shimura is Mariko's patient. Shimura's presence evidently drew Ichiro's attention since he gazed at Shimura for an extended period of time. Mariko noticed Ichiro was interested in Shimura's presence after Shimura departed. Mariko goes to Dr. Aizawa's residence to learn more about Ichiro's past. Dr. Aizawa is a guy who cared for Ichiro when he was a youngster. Dr. Aizawa said that Ichiro has always looked different from other youngsters his age. He sat silently in the corner of the room like a doll and exhibited no spontaneous action like people in general. Both of Ichiro's parents were killed in a hit-and-run. According to Dr. Aizawa's account, in Irashu, Ichiro's grandpa looks after him. Irashu is intrigued by his grandson and requests that Dr. Aizawa watch him. Every day, Aizawa instructs Ichiro to use the restroom after each meal. If only Ichiro had received orders from Aizawa, he could have done it. Aizawa claims that Ichiro does not have a brain problem, but rather an outstanding brain in comparison to other people. He can remember the whole book and its contents just by skimming through it. He can also answer complicated riddles in a relatively short period of time. Aizawa compared Ichiro's cognitive strength to a library with thousands of volumes that could compete with machine intelligence. Aizawa gives Ichiro the moniker Brain Man. Despite these benefits, Ichiro seems to just eat and urinate when instructed. Irashu instructed Aizawa to go when he was pleased with his observations, and he intended to do something to Ichiro. Irashu then sent a martial arts specialist called Ino to train Ichiro self-defense. Irashu said that he wanted Ichiro to destroy evil on Earth, but this was in retaliation for the hit-and-run driver who murdered his son. Ichiro can learn martial arts swiftly and easy because to his superpowers. When Ino saw this, he pulled Ichiro away from his grandfather's home to rescue him and awaken his human spirit. Unexpectedly, the night after Ichiro went out with Ino, his grandfather's home was plundered and burnt down. While attempting to flee, Ichiro came upon the thief and strangled him without hesitation. This murderous conduct may be carried out without the need for commands, as Ichiro normally does. Ichiro vanished after Irishu died at his home. Several offenders, including thieves, murderers, and rapists, were discovered slain not long after the occurrence. The investigators came to the conclusion that Ichiro was the one who murdered these crooks. Knowing this, Chaya determines that Ichiro was not the suicide bomber on the bus the other day, but that he is attempting to assassinate the true perpetrator. Mariko then proceeded to observe Ichiro. Mariko tells Ichiro that her sister was killed 8 years ago, with her brows and hair chopped off. Shimura, who Ichiro saw in the observation room the other day, was the murderer of his sister. Mariko then attempts to revive Ichiro by claiming that he is not a killer. Ichiro eventually drove himself to the jail. He loosened his shackles silently with a clip and raced towards Hirono, who was in front of him and holding him captive. Chaya, who was close, attempted to help Hirono, who was presently in danger. Midorikawa and Yuria were observed riding a motorcycle outdoors, attempting to match their vehicle with Ichiro's automobile. Midorikawa and Yuria fire arrows at the police vehicle that is accompanying them, creating a collision and traffic congestion. Ichiro had evidently seen the entrance of Midorikawa and Yuria in the jail vehicle. That's why he told the bus to come to a halt. Outside, Midorikawa and Yuria kidnapped one of the cops and demanded Ichiro to come out. They said that they were going to pick up Ichiro. Ichiro unexpectedly exited the jail vehicle and instantly shot Midorikawa. Before Midorikawa fell, she pushed the trigger so that the bomb she had already hidden in another police vehicle detonated. A massive explosion was imminent. Yuria is apparently still alive from the tragedy. She then hurried to flee on her motorcycle. As a consequence of the incident, Hirono had to be hospitalized. At the hospital, Mariko, who was in the bathroom, was suddenly assaulted by Yuria. After the assault, the hospital lights went out entirely, and suddenly, a series of explosions damaged numerous portions of the facility. Mariko awoke to find herself tied up in a room with explosives all over her body. Midorikawa orchestrated all of this in order to elicit Ichiro's attendance. Midorikawa had put explosives in all of the hospital's pipelines. Meanwhile, multiple explosions continue to occur in another area of the hospital. Chaya and many other cops are looking for the location of another device. Ichiro abruptly said that explosives had been put across the hospital. He then said that he was heading to the control room. Chaya assumed Ichiro was the mastermind behind the blast. Nonetheless, Chaya took Ichiro to the control room per his request. When they got at the control room, they saw Hirono bound to a chair and covered with explosives. Chaya's phone abruptly rang. It was, apparently, Midorikawa. Midorikawa declares his desire to murder Ichiro, and she threatens to explode another bomb if her wish is not granted. Chaya claims to have a bomb disposal squad and does not need to submit to Midorikawa. On the one hand, it seems like Chaya's bomb disposal crew was destroyed by an unexpected explosive strike. Chaya, feeling he had no option, assaulted Ichiro, sparking a furious combat between them. Hirono, in an attempt to end the conflict, dropped himself, causing the explosives all over his body to detonate. Hirono died there and there. Meanwhile, Ichiro flees Chaya and travels to the place specified by Midorikawa. Midorikawa and Mariko were in the automobile at that time. Midorikawa then drove her automobile at high speeds with the intent of killing Ichiro. But Ichiro, who has superhuman strength, is not easily vanquished and can recover from Midorikawa's first onslaught. Midorikawa then rammed her vehicle into Ichiro again, but this time he survived. Ichiro can perceive the anguish of witnessing himself, who is constantly attacked by Midorikawa, from inside the automobile. Ichiro, who is superhuman, reveals that he has reached his limit. His head told him to keep going, but his body was already incapable of doing so. Midorikawa then reversed the automobile and raced at Ichiro. That's when Mariko abruptly yanked on the brakes, sending the automobile they were in bouncing and knocking Midorikawa out for a time. Ichiro takes advantage of this opportunity to assault Midorikawa. He then pulled Midorikawa to the end and strangled her. Mariko unexpectedly exits the vehicle and begs Ichiro not to murder Midorikawa. She informs Ichiro that he is not a killer. However, Midorikawa instead planned to blow the bomb on Mariko's body by taking the detonator in her spocket. A gunshot perforated Midorikawa's body just as she was about to hit the button. Chaya, who had managed to catch up with them, apparently fired the shot. Chaya then moved up to Midorikawa and shot her numerous times. He then leveled his revolver towards Ichiro, who was standing nearby, and reportedly, just as Chaya was ready to fire his shot, The ammo in his pistol ran out. Ichiro didn't say anything more, leaving Chaya and Mariko with half his body ability and hobbling. At one point, Shimura was observed strolling in the rain. He seems to be holding a parcel and walking towards a residence. Mariko, who was seated next to her laptop, got a message from Ichiro saying that someone was about to assassinate her most important patient. Mariko then hurried through the rain toward a residence not far from her own. She knocked on Shimura's door and entered his room, which was dark. Mariko immediately yelled Shimura's name, and sure enough, Shimura was dead, laying in a room. She was taken aback to see it, and then she appeared to hear something. Mariko investigates the source of the noise and discovers a youngster hidden in Shimura's bathtub. Shimura apparently intended to make the youngster his next victim. She contacts Ichiro the following day. Mariko wonders how Ichiro knew Shimura would murder again. Ichiro claimed to have seen bite marks on Shimura's new arm during their encounter. Shimura, Ichiro said, had exploited him all this time in order for him to be free. Mariko then inquires as to why Ichiro rescued her and the small kid. Then Ichiro explained that Mariko was the first to cry for him, and he wanted to thank her. The phone was then hung up on, and Ichiro seemed to grin heartily. The lesson of this tale is that human sentiments matter in our world. Even if you have superpowers, if you don't have emotions, those abilities are meaningless.